Welcome back to more Cutter Simpsons Unhinged. We are at number 19 in our thing, and I try to do one episode per season and all that, and then there will be bonus ones, I promise you. Anyhow, so let's take a look at our journey. First, we looked at Lisa Goes Gaga from season 23. That's the one that Lady Gaga thinks she's a Christ-like figure. Season 19's that 90s show trying to get the plot hole about Homer and Marge's relationship and Bart being born. Season 24, we looked at the episode with Homer with Bongo, and you know how Bongo bit Mr. Burns and had to be forced upstate. Grandpa got punished, but Homer basically couldn't trust dogs or apes. Season 3, Home at the Bat, we looked at that great episode. It is a sports episode, but it beat The Cosby Show first run in the ratings when The Simpsons were on Thursday nights. Season 21, we looked at the Olympics episode. Obviously, we've decided to go with that route because of the Olympics happening in real life. Season 11's Maud episode when she dies and all that, and how it changed Ned and Homer and a few other people, and logic. We looked at tis the season 15 season, the season 15 Christmas episode, which saw Homer try to be nice to people, but Flanders gets a little jealous. Season 9, Principal and the Pauper. Yeah, I went there with that episode. And practically what ends up happening is that, how it basically jumped the shark and ruined classic Simpsons. The Golden Simpsons, I mean. Season 5, Homer and Apu, because I needed an Apu episode in a sense. And it was great to see Apu featured. We looked at season 7, Lisa's the Vegetarian. That's the 10th one. Lisa changing to vegetarian and how they basically had to play to Paul McCartney to make Lisa a vegetarian so that he could guest star. Season 22's Love is a Many Strangled Thing. I talk about why the Simpsons decided they needed to push the envelope with Bart deserving to be strangled and all that. And then season 31's Todd Well Has Forsaken Me. I did that on Good Friday because of the Easter holiday and how Todd doesn't believe in God because of him taking Maud away from him. And basically, Homer and Ned have conflict. And Lisa becomes a prick. Season 35's Lisa gets an F1. I did that one because I wanted to see, Lisa, a good season 35 episode, and how the roles were reversed. That Homer was the worried one and Marge was the nurturing one. Season 16's episode about gay marriage and all that, how it didn't really tick me off. What ticked me off was the couch gag about the Stanley Cup this year that the NHL went on strike, and also the fact that Homer sold out his anti-gay rights for money. Season 32's Diary Queen, which Edna's diary inspires Bart to do better, and then Lisa, for some effed up reason, decides to try to ruin Bart's chances, and Bart goes into a spiral, but Flanders gets him out of it. We looked at this Family Guy versus The Simpsons in 2014. That famous episode that Family Guy spent an hour dealing with The Simpsons and how The Simpsons basically may have gotten a second wind if Family Guy got fucked over. Season 10, Bart the Mother. We looked at the episode in which Bart plays with a BB gun that Nelson got, and then his motherly instincts were to try to get the eggs, but Marge had conflict with Bart, and it worked out in the end. And last week we talked about the Italian double dip from season 17, in which we saw um, the family go to Italy to get Mr. Burns a new car, and then they deal with Sasha Bob being the mayor, and how the B plot in the previous episode about Lisa going to Italy, trying to speak Italian, led to the A plot of the episode. That rarely happens. So anyway, today we're going to be looking at a season 8 episode. And of course, season 8, like almost all of the seasons prior to season 10, it was tough to pick one. So I managed to pick this one. And it is a famous episode that basically saw the Simpsons get kind of bit off. Let's talk about Homer's Enemy. Jerkass Homer, Marge's worries, Bart's pranks, Lisa's causes, Maggie not talking a lot, Grandpa being senile, Patty and Selma boring Marge, Arnie Sif is a jerk, Chief Wiggum making things happen, Mr. Burns being a dick. You can never stop the Simpsons. Heaven knows they've been trying for years and they still come back for more. 37 seasons is a bit much, don't you think? It's a crazy Simpsons. Something happens. A do 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 do. This is not a clip show. Have no fear. I've got topics for years. Okay, so as you see Homer in this photo with a guy pointing at him, scowling and all that. How did we get to this point? Well, simple. This episode of Homer's Enemy from season 8 starts when Ken Brockman does a fluff piece about someone who went through a massive adversity named Frank Grimes, who's this basically nerdy type of person. Anyway, Frank Grimes was abandoned by his parents at 4 years old, and he worked through life being a courier, giving rich kids presents. At age 18, he was in a cycle accident, and he was basically having to teach himself the five senses, taste, smell, hearing, sight, and I can't remember the fifth one. But nevertheless, he actually gets his degree in nuclear energy. Unfortunately, though, a bird takes away his diploma. However, Burns feels this is massive for him and decides to allow Frank Grimes to be his new executive vice president. So this was an amazing moment. And then you got yourself the fact that the next day, Burns gets inspired by the next fluff piece about a dog who actually saved a baby and then pushed a carriage in front of a robber. He wants to make that dog the executive vice president and just dumps Grimes off in 7G. So Grimes is okay with Carl and Lenny. Unfortunately, though, not with Homer, who calls himself who calls Frank grimy and doesn't really get along and all that. Um, Grimes realizes how bad Homer is. Homer's a safety inspector, and that Homer doesn't have a nuclear diploma like Lenny, Carl, and Grimes does. Homer just showed up on the first day. Obviously, that's a typo because other times the power plant has existed, and Homer got a job and tried to you know, kiss up to Smith to Burns. It's hard to do the terms. Nevertheless, Homer tries to get along with Grimes, but eats Grimes' special lunch and then accidentally um, almost ingests hydrochloric acid. Well, of course, when Homer eats, Grimes makes the thing that Homer's a pig. However, Lenny and Carl said that no, pigs tend to chew. I say he's more like a duck. So basically, he gets mad, and then Grimes flings the acid, burns a wall, burns, pay cuts him, and basically Grimes is mad and makes Homer his enemy. In the subplot, we'll quickly go to the subplot that Marge goes to City Hall to get a license plate, a personalized license plate, but Bart doesn't like it and then wanders into an auction, bets $1, and is the winner of something, a dilapidated factory. So Bart's happy about it. Bart and Milhouse basically tour it and cause trouble. And Milhouse is made to be the night watchman, but he watches it crumble to the ground and the rats go into Moe's tavern. Okay, so that out of the way, Homer realizes he has an enemy. He bemoans that fact at the pub, and Barney learns that Moe has a enemies list, but the enemies list mirror Richard Nixon's enemies list. However, Moe then puts Barney's name down, and Barney groans. So anyway, Homer is told by Moe to win him over by any means necessary. So Homer decides to get his family into nice clothes and a lobster, and tells Grimes under the guise of something about the power plant that he's going to visit. So anyway, Homer introduces Marge, his starting life Marge, Lisa, IQ 156, Bart, who owns a factory, and a baby. And basically, Grimes says, "Thank good God, this place is a palace. I live in an apartment above a bowling alley and under another bowling alley." Homer's impressed because he loves bowling. So anyway, he says, "How did you afford this house?" "I don't know how the economy works." Well, of course, in real life, we find out that Grandpa sold his house to give Homer the money for 742 Evergreen Terrace and all that. But anyway, Homer shows up some photos of him in space, him with the Smashing Pumpkins, Homer Palooza, his episode with Gerald Ford, the two bad neighbors with Bush Sr., but Gerald Ford moves in at the end of the episode, and then, of course, Deep Space Homer. And Grimes is like, "You went to space? You never been?" And then Homer actually presents his Grammy Award in the positive, which is unusual because he usually bemoans that. Grimes goes on a massive rant saying that Homer coasts through life with his attitude and how he works hard and he gets nothing, and that Homer's sloth-like thing gets him something. Bart says, he's got you there, Dad. Homer tries desperately to counteract, but Grimes goes on a tangent and says that, you got a nice car, you got a couple of cars, you got a nice family, a son who owns a factory, and lobsters. I hate you. So basically, Homer doesn't know what to do. Homer refuses to go to work until Marge tells him to go to work. So Homer decides to be the model employee that he ever should be. But Grimes is still not happy, saying that Homer's just trying to suck up to him. Lenny and Carl says that, people make mistakes. And of course, Grimes says accidents tripled since he was safety inspector. Of course, Homer won that by foul play. Nevertheless, he says that it'll make me a happy man to find out that Homer Simpson is a terrible person and all that. So he decides to rig a poster for a child's model contest, and Homer is convinced to go to work early, out of work, go home early and build it. Grimes laughs, but then Homer smashes into Grimes' car. Ugh. So anyway, Homer has things a top secret and all that. At the power plant competition, Ralph is first, but he makes a Malibu Stacy dollhouse into a conference room, media room, and a few other things. Burns kicks Ralph off the stage. Ralph doesn't understand until Wiggum says, "Ralphie, sweetie, get off the stage." Martin comes in, and his model is fantastic. Unfortunately, Burns thinks it's cold and sterile. And this is Mr. Burns talking. Martin says it's great. It's powering everyone through. It even has the lights for this room. You lose next. And then Homer comes in with his model. Grimes says, "Hey, look, but Homer's entering a contest for children. Shut up! You're making us lose the contest. Can you explain your model, young man?" Actually, it actually helps that Burns doesn't know Homer's name. And then Grimes says, "What's there to explain? He's an idiot. Pipe down." Homer explains that he added fins for wind resistance and a cool racing stripe. Burns awards him first prize, and Grimes goes absolutely bonkers. So Grimes goes absolutely bananas, saying that Homer's won a contest for children, and he beat their brains out, and everyone cheers for him, including Burns. Grimes goes nuts and acts like Homer, thinking that he's going to get a promotion, a raise, and get a wife and family and lobsters. And then he decides to go to the electrical thing. Says, "What's this? Extremely high voltage. Well, I don't need safety gloves because I'm Homer." Ugh. It's actually a fact that in Canada on Global, which did the Simpsons first run, that they actually had to freeze frame it because they didn't want the electrical lights and all that. But yet, Grimes electrocutes himself at his funeral. um, Reverend Lovejoy talks about how adversity builds character and all that, but Homer just slouches back, sleeps, and says, "Change the channel, Marge," and everyone laughs at him instead of Frank Grimes. So basically, Homer inadvertently takes attention away from Grimes at his own funeral. So that's the episode. A lot of people said that it kind of was a little too dark for The Simpsons and all that, and purposely, I think that's what it was. But the fact of the matter is that Homer causing Grimes stress is terrible and all that. The show made this kind of a meta thing, and in the essence of Itchy and Scratchy Poochie, the previous season, season 7, that they just made the meta joke that, a show shouldn't go on too long, and adding characters basically is a attempt to win viewers and all that. But for me, this was basically calling themselves out, saying that Homer's slovenly appearance and, coasting through life with people doing most of the work for him happens, and how people can't catch break, like Grimes can't catch breaks. And that's fair assessment. And this is season 7, mind you. This is 30 years ago because we just finished season 37. So the fact is that Homer, it makes a good point. That Homer Simpson coasts through life and all that. He has adversity too, Homer does, but it's mostly due to the fact that, sometimes he feels like he's going to lose Marge, sometimes he feels like he loses the kids, and, he works hard to try to fix problems and all that. Frank Grimes is a pretty good character in my mind. I think he's the greatest one note Simpsons character and the one episode Simpsons character. I mean, Hank Scorpio should be close. And of course, season 8, you only move twice. It's there too. But of course, season eight's full of good episodes, and it didn't even make the backup plan. But the fact of the matter is that it did read into, Grimes being upset that Homer gets all these perks and he gets nothing. And yeah, Homer doesn't deserve everything he's got. He doesn't deserve a wife that keeps him in line. He doesn't deserve 3 kids in which he neglects. And he doesn't deserve the social life of Lenny and Carl. But the fact is that, for all your faults, Homer is lovable. And they basically made the whole lovable thing. And yes, this could have jumped the shark by Principal and the Pauper did so. And we talked about that. So the fact of the matter, and of course, you'll see the playlist down below of the Simpsons Unhinged from 1 to 19. So Frank Grimes kind of makes an appearance in season 14's The Great Louse Detective as Homer's brakes were cut and basically Homer's worried about who's trying to kill him. Sideshow Bob comes in as a detective, but he's more inclined to try to destroy Bart. Although Bart gets a buzzer to hurt Sideshow Bob and Bart misuses it. It's a simple fact that, that happened. And then we find out that it's Frank Grimes Jr. Homer has a tough time remembering Frank Grimes and all that. Frank Jr. tries to remind him about his ape-like incompetence drove his father insane. And then, of course, we had the flashback of Grimes not using safety gloves for high voltage. Not even Homer would do that. And then the tombstone says Frank Grimes, Homer's enemy. Like, yeah, but Marge even named Frank Grimes in the enemies list to Sideshow Bob. But it said the late Frank Grimes. They should have went to the tombstone. Homer questions why there's a Frank Jr. He had an affinity for hookers. Is that wrong? And then Frank Grimes Jr. gets arrested and Homer's safe. And of course, Sideshow Bob tries to kill Bart, but then can't because he can't stop thinking about Bart's face. And then, of course, the next episode was the Italian job that we did last week. So that's all. All right, so that's it for today. We're going to have a special bonus episode on Monday, the 18th of May, because Monday, the 18th is a Canadian holiday. It's Victoria Day, or what we call in Canada, May 2-4. I know the next week, the 25th, is Memorial Day in the United States, but I go by Canadian holidays. So, on Victoria Day, we will have another Simpsons episode. Yes, it's number 20, and yes, it's going to be the one thing that the great YouTube channel, the RealJims, has not touched upon, and that ticks me off, Marge's psychosis. And it led from a season 18 episode in which she refused to kick Kill Gunderson out. So we're going to be talking about Kill Gil on Monday as a special weekday episode and see about Marge's psychosis. And yes, I have to do a lot of research. So shoot me. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.